All right, we've got a few folks with us today. Welcome to everybody. I'll go ahead and get started. We may have a few more that'll come and go as they need to. When you come in the meeting, usually you are muted. We have our settings on Zoom so that people are muted. So just know if you need to talk, you may want to just check your little mic. And if you're on a device, you should just be able to tap your screen and your control panel will come up where you can see the little mic where you can mute and unmute yourself. But we're excited today to have a little conversation about just sort of what's happening out there. Most of you know, because I've been harassing you, that VCM sent out a survey to congregations to find out what congregations are into these days and how they might be needing some assistance or what their future plans might look like. And so I invited a few friends here today to talk specifically about the work that they're doing in their congregations, but wanted to begin by giving you a little bit of just a few of the responses that we've gotten from our congregations. I think I probably sent out close to 60 emails because I was trying to get all the churches and the fellowships, and I emailed their worship leaders and or administrative folk if they didn't have anybody consistently. And so far, I think we've heard from 32 of them, which I think is a pretty good response rate. I'm going to keep hounding people though. So if you haven't filled out your survey, you know you need to, although I think everybody on this call has done that. So, but I wanted to give you just a little bit of a preview of sort of some of the things that we're hearing from folks. And then I was going to turn it over to, I'm actually going to let Hannah finish the meeting. I've got another meeting to hop onto, but I wanted to just share some of this with you. First of all, we asked folks how your church is doing worship right now, and nearly half are doing either a live version of worship, something that's streamed, and another 40% are doing some kind of pre-recorded experience made available online, and then another 40-some% are doing some kind of either daily or weekly email devotional, and then some combination thereof. It seems to be fairly common. Most of that is happening in the church sanctuary, although still probably about 1 in 3 are also using a variety of other settings, anything from the pastor's home to the outside of the church area to another area at church to folks who are videoing in members. I mean, the members are videoing themselves like at home, things like that. In terms of the elements, definitely everybody is preaching or talking, doing some kind of devotional. That's about 90% of our respondents. 86% doing some kind of scripture reading, liturgy, some kind of reading. Prayers are big. Music, about 75% are doing some kind of music with their worship offering. And just over half are mentioning offering as a call to action, sort of like for reminding folks to give. So that was a little lower than I thought it would be, but so those are the things happening. Only about 20% are doing some kind of children's message. So I want to remind you that we do have on our website, it's called Keeping the Faith at Home, and it's a really nice page. It's got the webinar that Beth did with several other educators that gives you some resources. So if you're looking for pre-existing resources, like Margaret Norris is doing a godly play every week that's available on YouTube. Jamie Vandock in Raleigh is doing some really interesting things that are available on video that you could get and share with your folks. So just be aware of that there is some children's stuff out there. So visit our website or email us if you want to know more about that. In terms of obstacles, to online worship specifically, the number one answer with almost half of folks, and really more than half when you take in some of the other comments that were similar, preaching and singing to an empty room is the biggest obstacle. And I think that does sort of relate to some, I saw some in the other that talked about intimacy in worship and koinonia and being able to just feel like everybody is engaged in worship. And to me, that's all sort of part of that whole, it's an empty space. It is a strange time. The second most mentioned obstacle was around teaching members to use technology. So that is a big one. So you'll be seeing some more from us to help with that soon. And sort of related to that, there was also the internet quality and equipment challenges. So it's sort of figuring out how to take what you may have or add to what you've got and make it work. And then learning new technology. So many technology related obstacles there. In terms of sort of other things that are happening, there is a lot of churches, but I would say 3 out of 4 are doing some kind of phone calls to members. Either the board's divvying them up or some other group is divvying them up or the pastor is doing some calling. About 3/4 of the group are doing online board and committee meetings. Just over half are doing some kind of online studying, whether it's a Bible book or Sunday school kind of gathering. About half are doing some kind of pastor's devotions or messages. And about half are doing some kind of postcard or letter/email ministry to members. So a variety of ways that folks are trying to stay in touch. About 1 in 3 are doing an actual outreach or service kind of thing. I know that can be a little more tricky to pull off in these times. And then a lot of folks talked about future plans as it related to continuing the live stream idea, even after we get out of this, this stay-at-home time. There is a group, and I suspect that some of the group that didn't respond to my survey are waiting to reopen church for normal operation. So I think that ought to be really interesting. I'm not sure what normal operation is going to be after all this, but we do have a webinar coming up with Peg Chamberlain, if any of you know her, who around sort of what our new normal might be looking like, and we'll be talking about the road to Emmaus. That's going to be on May 13th, and I think that's going to be really, really good. There's some game nights that are being planned with Zoom, using Zoom, and some other weekly check-ins. Folks want to continue online Bible study or start an online Bible study. And there's also a lot of talk about reforming or forming membership, shepherding groups to really work on congregational care. So those are some of the things. In terms of the help they were interested in, it was number 1 was additional assistance regarding technology and tools and capability to live stream or record video. So we'll be reaching out to some of you all who responded with that to try to get more information on that so that the help we provide you can be useful. Number 2, nearly half of the respondents said that they needed some assistance relative to faith formation or spiritual growth content that's been adapted. And we're working on that too. If you're a curriculum customer, we've got a special page set up with some digital resources in that regard as it relates to Sunday school. If you want to reach out to us about that, it's a password protected page, but we can probably work out a way to get you in there. And we're also working on an adaptation of Gemeinschaft for online use, both as a personal spiritual journey, an inward journey, as well as an outward journey. So look for that coming up in early May. We'll be rolling out some resources that will be Moravian specific resources for you all to use in a variety of settings and groups. So I just wanted to kind of give you that overview. I hope to be doing a post about the results of the survey. That'll be out there for people to sort of in general to see what's happening, but I just wanted to share that with you. And I wanted to thank Evette, who is the pastor at Rolling Hills in Orlando, the Orlando, Florida area, and fransaylor, who's the pastor at Mizpah up in the Roll Hall area. And then John D. Wright, who's with us from Conoke Hills out on his porch. And then Hanna is actually representing Chaz. Chaz has been sick. He's fine. He just had a headache. But he had to rearrange his schedule, so he couldn't be with us from Calvary. But Hanna is actually, besides being a project manager at the Board of Cooperative Ministries, she's on the board of Calvary. So she will be talking a little about what Calvary is into. So Hanna, I'm gonna kind of let you take it away. And we are recording, so just be aware of that. And we may make this available later on as a resource to folks too, so when we have that conversation about what's happening and what you hope could be happening. So thanks so much. And Hanna, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, I will go ahead and kind of talk about some of the things Calvary's doing, and then I'll let the other ones jump in and give what they're doing. So before this all happened, Calvary had a live stream. So we have just continued doing the live stream, but with, a skeleton staff. So Lane and Chaz and Amanda, our organist, and then a few choir members will be in the sanctuary and they do the service. During the Sunday morning worship, there is a time for offering, and they will just remind us that we can tithe online, or send it in, and then we'll sing the doxology after that and everything. Also, Amanda will do the youth, or the children at Calvary do godly play, so she will do a little bit of godly play during the service. So she'll come down from the choir loft and read the story and walk the kids through that. And a lot of times the children's parents will take pictures of the kids doing the godly play with Amanda. So that's really neat. And then as far as like pastoral stuff, the guys are doing a lot of Zoom meetings. Lane, Chaz, and Amanda are really great about sending quick little emails. Lane is an amazing letter writer, so he will send out letters. And like I got a text the other day from Amanda just saying she's thinking and checking in. So they're doing a lot of that, just like touching base, reaching out to people. We have all of our meetings on Zoom. We are doing small groups through Zoom. We had small groups in place before that, but now we've just gone to the Zoom format, which that's been a lot of fun. Still checking in with those. This week, we're having a children's Zoom check-in, so all the children of the church can jump on. And I was even invited to that with my little one. So that's fun because we'll have them from babies all the way up through high school for and it's not a long session. We're just going to be like 20 minutes just so the kids can see each other. Another thing that they did is they would take for the elementary school kids, they took little Easter baskets full of stuff and dropped them on the front porch. So they had like eggs, and they had the resurrection egg kit and all that stuff. So that was really cute that they did for Easter. As far as, I lost my train of thought. Nope, yep, completely gone. But they are very in touch. They have done a great job doing that, staying connected. They did Holy Week all week, and everything is live. They haven't done any pre-recorded things. Oh, what I was going to say is after each Sunday service, the Lane and Chaz will be on Facebook. So they do a little quick Facebook Live. It's usually like 15 minutes, kind of like what Chaz did after the sunrise service. They do that for each of our worships on Sundays, and they will just answer questions or just continue the discussion off of the live stream format. So that's been really interesting and really neat to have that like back and forth, kind of like what would happen at the door as we were leaving, but now it's on Facebook. So that's kind of a little bit about what Calvary's doing. So I am going to let's see, Fran talk about what she's doing.
So at MISPA, we are operating a bit more simply. We were not really set up to start with before all of this for streaming services or any of that. I mean, we literally had just had our Wi-Fi boosted enough to reach the sanctuary a couple weeks before we had to stop meeting together in that way. So rather than hustling and bustling and trying to reinvent the wheel at that time, we just sort of jumped in with what we had, which looks a little bit like this. On Sunday mornings, I post a video of a message, of a short meditation, scripture reading, prayer, up on MISPA's Facebook page. That has been really intriguing to, while I can't see exactly who is joining in because I'm not doing that as a Facebook Live, I am recording and then putting it up. but I can see numbers of folks who are joining in, and we have quite a few more joining in that way on a Sunday morning than we've had in the sanctuary in quite a while. So that's been rather exciting. We do, during that time, encourage people to participate and interact by posting comments underneath the video, to share photographs sometimes of their own worship space, or I think one week we asked folks to post photos of their coffee mugs or bedroom shoes or something. I mean, just anything to sort of get people engaged and interact with one another. And frankly, that's been fun. That's just been a good, easy way to connect. There has been some interaction through the Facebook page, through private messages, with folks who either have not been involved in the church for a very long time, or folks who are not members at MISPA but have joined in and have had questions and things they wanted to talk about. So that has been an interesting way to make connection with people. As far as, you know, having Zoom meetings and consistent small groups and things like that, again, we did not really have those things in place before this. We are a very small congregation. We do have 2 Sunday school classes who meet, adult Sunday school classes who meet regularly. I am working with them to see if their teachers are interested in trying some Zoom Sunday school. I'm not gonna push that, simply invite, just to see if those teachers are interested in pursuing that. We did meet every night via Zoom during Holy Week for readings. That was a lot of fun. Again, had people join in who have not been active at MISPA in a very long time. So I've been intrigued by the sort of safe space that these online gatherings are creating for people who, for whatever reason, have not felt comfortable being at MISPA, but they still want to be a part of the fellowship. So that has been one of the blessings in this. I do have, I would say probably half of my congregation does not use the internet at all. They don't have smartphones. That's by choice. And so I do spend a lot of time on the phone connecting with our members, writing cards to people. While my board has not, you know, divvied up per se the role to make phone calls, MISPA is a congregation where people consistently check in with one another anyway. And so I feel like everyone is being reached and connected with in somehow or another during this time, which is a huge blessing to me. As I said, they really take care of one another, and that's been a wonderful thing. What are we trying new? So this Sunday's gospel reading is about the Emmaus, the road to Emmaus. And so what I think I'm going to do, I've been sending out just sort of a weekly, hey, thinking about you, you know, holding you in prayer, and including either a prayer or scripture or some sort of devotion in that email. And so I think this week I'm going to do that, but go ahead and give them the gospel reading to start looking at and thinking about. And Sunday's Facebook message will be about, you know, we'll focus on that reading as well. But I think I'm going to try, as a part of that, on Monday night, sort of a Zoom potluck gathering where we will actually eat together and talk about how Christ is revealed to us as we break bread together during that time. So that's going to be the new venture for this week. But again, that Zoom and those things are already in place, so we're not having to really hustle around to figure out the technology part, which is good. So
Thank you, Fran. I'm going to ask Evette to speak a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So as for Rolling Hills, we are engaging in ministry through the Zoom platform. Our Sunday morning community worship, our board meetings, and all other activities are being done through Zoom. As it relates to our givings, then they are being mailed in or being dropped off by our members. And we're so thankful to God that it's consistent with what we would have been getting when we were meeting in the sanctuary. As it relates to pastoral care, I do engage in weekly calls and texts to every single one of my members. And what I'm also planning, along with my board members at this time, is to put or to implement a care committee, because we do have a few members that live alone. And so just to ensure that their needs are being met in light of what's happening around us, we are planning on putting a care committee in place, and these members will minister to the needs of those who are living alone. Now, since the shutdown, or since this new norm, we have not been seeing our young people much on a Sunday morning for online community worship. And so what I've done, I have implemented a youth link up. And so tonight, for the first time, I'll be meeting with all my young people via Zoom and just give them an opportunity to share what they're going through, where they are at this time, because my youngest child, she's 12, and she has always wanted to be homeschooled. And so when this happened, she was elated, she was happy. But after 3 weeks, she came and she was like, "Mom, no, I want to go back to school." So in light of that, I thought, oh, what's going through the other young people's mind? So that's the reason for having this youth link up, so they can share and see where they are and what advice I can give to them. Also, for the first time, using the Zoom platform, we will be commencing Bible studies tomorrow evening, and our people, they are excited about this. Now, for Holy Week worship, we joined with the Moravian Church Without Walls, and on the Holy Thursday, we had our worship session. We had Holy Communion, and it was quite interesting, but moving in light of the context that we use for Holy Communion. Another thing that we are looking at, taking into consideration that our young people, most of them would be experiencing graduation next month, sometimes this year. And it's a loss for them because graduation has been canceled. And so we're looking at the opportunity of having a graduation service for these young people, so at least they can enjoy walking across the platform in their hat. We're not sure how we're going to work the robe thing out, but giving them an opportunity to walk the platform and to receive a certificate, which is representative of the graduation from college. So that's basically where we are. We're just trusting God, reaching out to each other, being our brothers and our sisters' keeper, and waiting on God for the next move.
Thank you, Yvette. Now I'm going to ask John to tell us a little bit about what he's doing.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. And I sure did appreciate hearing what Calvary and MISPA and Evette's doing at Rolling Hills. I can't imagine being a new pastor in a situation like this, Evette. This is sort of a baptism of fire. And so my thoughts are certainly with you. Sounds like you got good things going. I think we did a good thing when we started out, or it's been good for us. When we saw that we could only have 10 in one spot and that we wouldn't be able to meet as a board or as boards as we have been, we decided to appoint a smaller committee made up of our chair and vice chair of each board and our head usher, who's also into building and ground. So the 5 of us have come together every 2 weeks in what we call a board leadership working group. And we basically do the work of the 2 boards at that every other meeting. So that's been very efficient for us. We do meet face to face, keeping our distance. So I think that's been helpful as far as making that structure. It went outside the bounds of our rules and regs, but these are peculiar times. So I guess you can do peculiar things in peculiar times. That's worked well for us. We don't have technology in place like most congregations do. And I think for us at least, and our ministry here, I think that's been somewhat of a good thing. It made us ponder how we could still be the church in times such as these without the use of technology, not having to create anything new that we're not very good at. And our thought and my thought as pastor was, let's just do what we've been doing well and adapt it to the circumstances. And early on, the question was, how could we continue to do Sunday? How could we continue to have a Sunday experience when we're not meeting, not able to meet in a larger gathering? And the early indications pointed to an increasing need for food assistance. We've supported Sunnyside well in the past, and the thought came, as we watched the drive-by testing, well, we could do a drive-by thing here at the church and just have people drop by food for Sunnyside ministry. We've always kind of looked at Sunnyside as an outreach of Conn Oak Hills Moravian Church more than a provincial ministry. It's our ministry. When somebody calls the church and says, do you help people with rent? Do you help people with food? I say, yes, we do, and we do it through Sunnyside ministry. So that was just a kind of a natural connection that we could use. So we've been doing the drive-by food collections for 5 Sundays now. We started on March the 29th. I count the number of people who come through the parking lot as they come, and we had 24 people come through the first week. And this past week we had 57, so it does have some momentum to it that's been quite good to see. So far we've averaged about 500 pounds of food each week. This past week I think we had our largest offering. David Holston said we had 600 pounds this week. And then people give cash also. That's the cash we've collected has been anywhere from $230 to this past week it was like $600+ this week. For me, one of the most rewarding things for me is to see how our friends and neighbors have responded. 2 weeks ago, we had 7 neighbors and friends, people from our conference who were not members of the church. This past week, we had 17, which is about a third, I guess, of what the people who come are not related to us as members. We've had great support this past week from Conn Oak Hills United Methodist Church. So this is something that's happening, I can say ecumenically with their support. And Common Worship has said that they want to participate with us in this. This past week, Russ came by and did during their worship hour, he I spoke to his people here. He drove up in his car and had his phone, and he spoke to his congregation here and invited them to come and respond to our food drive here. And we did get significant support from Come to Worship this week. I think it was back in the 2009 recessions, one of my takeaways from that was something of a proverb. Someone said that generosity is the antidote to anxiety. And I think I found that somewhat true, that when we're anxious, it helps to be generous. And that can tend to take away some of the anxiety. And that leads me to send Laura here. Laura Watson. Laura, thank you so much for what your folks did to set up an online portal for us. We've started using that. I haven't seen the reports of how that's going, but it's been such good timing for you to say that Raven Ministries Foundation is making this available to us. So that's been a great asset to us, at least to be able to offer the online giving. Another thing we've done was I've been for years, and I would say for years, I never got around to it, but I wanted to give each, in the past 3 or 4 years, we've had not really a large, but a significant number of families with young children. And I've often said, I need to get each of those families just a children's picture Bible. And I hadn't done it yet, but this gave me the opportunity to do that. I just went on to Amazon and ordered each home a picture Bible and sent it directly to their homes, to the children's names. And others have done something similar, but the children get that package with their name on it. And there's a nice new book in for them. And older siblings who know how to read will read it to the younger siblings. So that's been a really neat thing for us to see, for me to see how that's worked out, just to send each home a children's picture Bible. Let's see, what else? We've increased our communication somewhat. We remembered, it's sort of been a guiding principle through this. Several years ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, we went to the Virginia Creeper Trail, and our youth group was separated, and some got way ahead of the others. And in all likelihood, somebody had some bike trouble and fell far behind. So we were near the end, and I said to some, y'all go ahead and go back to the car and get ready. That way we'll be better prepared when the others catch up. And one of the youth came up, looked up at me and said, no, we're all going to finish together. We're not going to leave anybody behind. And so I've tried to do some things, some will get left behind, but I've tried to look out for those who might get left behind by doing more communication with regular mail. We send out a weekly mailing each week. I just call it a weekly pandemic update. And that gives the news, the developments. There's some devotional in that. There's some prayers in that. There's a prayer list in that. That goes out every week. In addition to the email that I've been doing for years, the weekly email, and also on Sunday morning when people come through the food drive, they get a bulletin that has some of the same information. It's that old principle that's outdated now, but they used to say, tell them if you have an announcement, say it 3 times in 3 different ways. And I think it takes a little more than that these days, but we're pretty much getting the same information out 3 different ways with hope that no one will be left behind. I don't have a Facebook account, but Mary does, my wife, and I've been posting more through her account on our church page, and that's been a big help. Another thing that's helped us is that we had some things in place. We did have a music festival that was scheduled for May the 9th. We always do that in conjunction with a blood drive. Well, we've canceled the music festival, but we have kept the blood drive on the calendar, so that gives us a sense of outreach, and the Red Cross is very grateful that we're continuing to do that. So we'll have a blood drive here on May the 9th. If you can promote that to your folks in any way, that would be wonderful. what's ahead? There might be I want to keep something if this draws out for months, and I think that it looks like it will. I think maybe the place where we might start getting into being more to see more usage with our tech would be maybe I'm kind of playing with the idea of developing during the from September to May we have a Wednesday night fellowship, which is a meal and a program, and then the music groups rehearse. And but I'm thinking maybe doing a Zoom Wednesday night fellowship where people check in. I worshiped with my daughter's congregation in Anacortes, Washington, out west this past Sunday. The worship was nice, the music was nice, the sermon was good, but I think the real value was seeing the other people, and we're not seeing each other. And maybe if I could develop a Zoom Wednesday night fellowship to do once or twice a month, that might help with that we're actually seeing people and getting the benefits from seeing others online. So we're trying to do the best we can with what we have to work with, and so that's kind of Hills these days.
Thank you, John. So I'm going to open up the floor for any questions, or if there's any ideas that you're currently doing at your church that you would like to share, feel free.
John, what was the name of the church you said you guys were working with, United Church?
Yes, the Conoke Hills United Church of Conoke Hills United Methodist Church. They're just down the street.
Okay.
And during in normal times, we have there's an association of 5 churches here in Conoke Hills, and we share the Thanksgiving service together and occasionally do another project together. It's just a very good working relationship between our congregations, and we support them as we can in their endeavors, and it's just so good to see them. We had 2 families from that congregation show up Sunday with huge donations of food, and they were one of the women there in the congregation is actually a volunteer at Sunnyside, so she was very thrilled that we were doing this as well.
Graham, hold on, you're muted. There you go.
John, I think you're on to something with this needing to see people. It makes such a difference. I learned that one of the first days of our quarantine, when I had 4 gatherings. 3 were with Zoom and 1 was with telephone conference call. And they were so different. The conference call just didn't do it like the others did. That's a big thing, just seeing faces.
And I might be interested, or I am interested to hear what some of the other congregations are doing. I see Oak Grove in the house, and I see Hopewell in the house, and Macedonia in the house, and Home Church, and Fairview. I'm kind of interested to hear what they might have to add.
Well, I was going to say to you, John, I just sent you a little message behind, but Freeze did, the first time we kind of gathered by Zoom was Holy Week, and we decided we were going to do a 6:30 to 10 of 7, so not to overlap with any other Holy Week streaming, because we knew some people would want to do that, but we got together at 6:30, and the first 10 minutes was just like, oh my gosh, everybody was so excited to see each other. And there were only 12 households on, but it was just like, oh, I haven't seen you in 3 weeks or 2 weeks. And it was very, very exciting. So I would recommend that you start your Wednesday night ASAP, because I think it's just a really good way to offer the opportunity to your members who have that ability to see each other. And yeah, the folks that don't have the tech, we've got people who don't, but we're trying to reach out to them in different ways. But that having that time to just chat and see each other. We just started last week, we started a a Zoom choir meeting. So on Thursday nights when we normally do choir, all of us got together and just hung out and chatted and did, process some things and brainstormed on what we could maybe do differently as we move forward into this unknown.
Thank you, Margaret.
Hanna, we've got a good group of youth, and Sunday nights at 7:30, we have a Zoom meeting where they get together, and one of our young ladies who is in college puts that together and helps us lead that. So it's been good to keep our youth group together.
Margaret, how often are y'all meeting over Zoom? Do you do it every week, weekly now, or?
Well, we've got our board meeting tonight, and those are one of the questions that's going to come up. Worth's been doing stuff on our website, similar to what Fran, I think, is doing, posting some videos or whatever. I'm more of a, how can we get our congregants together? So there's some ideas about maybe doing a Sunday evening worship, just a pared down worship through Zoom. We're starting to contemplate maybe doing a Sunday morning early Sunday school Zoom. I don't want to, since we're not doing worship, like we're not set up like Calvary or Home Church or whatever to do worship. I want to be cognizant that some folks are worshiping like you did with your daughter's church, but worshiping with others on Sunday morning. So trying to pick times when it doesn't conflict with worship, actual worship. And for those who don't have, in our congregation, who don't have technology, I've tried to get them books of worship, telling them they can get Home Church on the radio through 101.5. I'm just trying to give information to people to connect them.
Initially, oh, excuse me.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, initially at Macedonia, our pastor, Zach, he was giving updates via video from his workshop where he makes guitars. And the idea was that creative ways that we can use our gifts and talents during this time of anxiety, but also is a worshipful time. But now we've really settled into what most of you have described through Zoom. We have our Sunday worship, which we are calling house worship, house church worship. So we see each other, of course, at the regular worship time, but it has the hymns and the prayer and some liturgy readings, but the sermon taught, the message is pretty much a sermon, but it's interactive. So the approach is more like a Bible study. As you know, Zach likes to ask questions. That's his favorite way of teaching. So our Sunday message is kind of a combination of the regular plus the interactive. And then we have Bible study meeting on Tuesday night. So we're starting Ecclesiastes tonight by Zoom. Plus we get our church letters where he has a message every week. And a little envelope for offering. So that's pretty much what we're doing. Everything else, I believe, is by Zoom.
I'll just pick up from what Margaret mentioned about the home church radio. That's been worship from home church on the radio forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And my mother lives at Salem Town. She doesn't have computers and all that in her house. So the radio is all she has. And to be able to listen to a Moravian service, even if she is home church, but I have shared that radio opportunity with lots of other Moravians who are elderly and don't have any computers to look at anything. And if they don't have anything else, then knowing they can turn it on at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning and hear a Moravian service is helpful. So that's, I guess, would be a good thing to share with, if you have members that absolutely have no other way to connect to worship on Sunday mornings, to try that.
Thank you. There is something that I thought was pretty interesting at New Philly. They are live streaming on Facebook, but there's several older adults there that don't have a computer or don't have Facebook. So someone at their church will have the Facebook up on their computer and will share their screen on Zoom. And so that gives somebody a phone number so they can call in and they can still hear the service. And you know, that person's at their house, they're not having to go anywhere to Zoom that. But it's just another opportunity for those people who don't have a computer. You can use the phone code, the phone number and the code for Zoom and call in. It's not as, you know, you don't get to see each other, but you still have that interaction, which can be nice and is a possibility. I mean, that was a really smart workaround, I think, to have that option of calling in for them, since they use Facebook Live. So I really thought that was a cool idea. So, any other ideas on what y'all are doing in your churches, or any struggles and questions that you might have?
This is Laura. I'm sorry my video is not on, but I am here. I'll add one thing at home church. I think our board has sort of a concerted effort in terms of reaching out to folks, but one of the things that a small group of us talked about is just to make the time to either call or write a note to everybody that sits near us, because most of us sit in the same spot every Sunday. So we have sort of our pew mates and our section friends. And so we're working on that. And I think that's kind of a nice extra different approach too, because I think there's some folks that sort of expect maybe to hear from a board member, a person in a leadership role, and maybe not necessarily that person that is just, you know, your peer, so to speak, if that makes sense. So we've been trying to do that, also recognizing that not all of our folks are on Zoom or are using the different technologies, so that a written note might be a nice way, or a phone call to stay in touch. One of the things that the Ministries Foundation is working on, because we're hearing from people who are saying we're doing all these online, you know, we're worshiping online, we're doing meetings online, but we're sort of overloaded in some ways with Zoom and all this stuff, but yet we miss talking to each other in really more meaningful ways. Margaret, to your point about your choir, just talking. So we're getting ready to start hosting some small group Zoom meetings, but they're going to be around a specific topic. And so actually getting ready to do one next week with a group of about 10 women around how did you learn what giving is, who's the person who's been a role model for you as a generous person, and who do you want to be as a steward or a generous person. So just a chance to be together and to talk, but not be doing business, just relating and getting to know one another a little bit better. So if you all feel like there's a need or a desire for that in your congregation, that's something I'd be happy to help facilitate if there's certain topics. Mainly we do stewardship, of course, but just trying to extend something else to give people a chance to connect, but maybe not by doing business or just by watching worship. So.
Thank you. Oh, one other thing that I remembered that Calvary's doing, that it was kind of in the works before this all happened, but it never really took off, is that my mom's Sunday school class is starting a book club. So it's something that a lot of people have extra time on their hands. So they've all gotten the same book, they Amazoned it. And then they're going to meet and discuss it. So that's something, I mean, it's kind of like a Bible study, but or Sunday school, but it's kind of just a group of mainly women that are going to get together and talk and just meet. And the circles are still meeting through Zoom, and they're still doing their Bible study. But the book club was really cool because it was something that was kind of in the works, but didn't really take off. So this has kind of forced it to work because they just want to have another connection, another way to see people. And that's made it really cool.
I'd like to just put a little local note to that statement is Amazon's great, But we have a wonderful local bookstore in town who will order any book you want, bookmarks. Please support them because you don't want your bookstores to go away.
I'll share a couple of things that maybe a little bit different from what I've heard. Certainly thank you for the opportunity to hear all this. One of the things that we have done, we had a board meeting by Zoom, and one of our board members works for the Stokes County school system. She's a guidance counselor, and what they did with the school system was send out a needs assessment survey. And so she was willing to do one of those for us with the church, and just got it out this past week. There's a link on our emails. And so we've already heard from a few folks, and one of the families is wanting to learn more about family devotions. So one of the first things I heard from this meeting was keeping the faith at home. So I'm going to pass that on to her. But I thought that was kind of neat to have that and to hear from people what their needs are. I think one of the neat things that happened here at King Moravian, the owners of Mrs. Pumpkins attend here, and they provide a lot of love feast funds for the churches during Holy Week. They didn't get a chance to do that, but the owner thought that he'd like to just make a batch of love feast funds for our congregation. And so what he did, and we just sent it out, took them to all of our members, which was really kind of a neat thing. And now our board wants to, be able to take something else to people, and we're kind of working on that. But just that kind of contact, I think, really kind of helped us feel more together. Just a wonderful way to let people know we're thinking about each other. So I thought that was kind of neat how that worked out. And what really helped us earlier this year, we had house meetings for our goal setting event. So we already had things set up to take to people's homes, and we had a lot of our board members involved. And even if it's just taking it up to their front porch, I think got a lot of good response from that. So those are a couple of things that we've been doing besides the videos and the Zoom meetings and emails.